Peter Mack is sent on a field assignment during World War III. There he meets Rhinus Sweeney, with whom he was in love 8 years ago, and tries to awaken his feelings to prevent the creation of a dangerous weapon. The main character asks his colleague if he was on assignment yesterday, and he says no because Lucy gave him a good slap and starts rubbing his cheek. The guy asks who it is, and he answers that it is his girlfriend, and lifting his jacket, shows his bandaged stomach and begins to tell that she almost shot him. She pulled a gun from under her pillow when he asked if they were going to bed. Peter asked him how long they had been together, and the colleague said about 6 months. He didn't understand what he did wrong, and the main character says that if you don't want to become a bad guy, you have to be ready to die. A blonde girl next to him asked if he had such an experience. Peter answered that he was, and she asked who that girl was. The guy said that she was incredibly beautiful and crazy, and he himself plunged into memories. Someone asked if she tried to kill him and said that crazy people are usually redheads. The main character was embarrassed and decided to change the topic of conversation by asking if they were wondering why they were all gathered here. His colleague said that Lucy and Lorraine were also redheads and suddenly blushed and hid behind him. A beautiful girl entered the room, and everyone started greeting her. Lorraine said that Jonathan had better keep his mouth shut if he wanted to live, and told him to follow her because the head was already waiting for them. At the meeting, the chief reported that this was a very important mission, and that its success would be decided by the outcome of the World War. The man says that they are probably confused by the fact that he gathered them here, and not an elite unit. The boss says that the problem is that they lost. Someone asked if they had died, but no one answered. The man says that he will soon make his move, and that Russia, China, and Iran are ready to kidnap people to lure him to their side. Some guy asked who he was, and Lorraine gave the initial sign, after which she turned on the image of an incredibly handsome young man on the screen. All colleagues thought that he was an actor, and only the main character plunged into memories. He thought that he had already forgotten this face because everything happened so long ago. But this appearance, which seems to have descended from Greek mythology, is not so easy to forget. When he heard the name Rhinus Sweeney, he made sure that he was definitely not mistaken and that it was this boy that he met 8 years ago. The girl began to tell that he was the son of the founder of one of the IT companies. And Jonathan asked, what was wrong with this prince? She said that 10 years ago he was engaged in the development of missiles and liquid weapons on behalf of the American military, and that most of his developments were created in the year when the boy was only 21. Loren said that half a year ago there was a leak of information, and this genius was able to collect the necessary information, develop a new weapon, and a kind of auction. Jonathan asked what weapon the leak was from. The chief says that this is the point. They do not know what it is, so it is necessary to find all the drawings and plans, and that if even one of them falls into the hands of the enemy, the operation will fail. The man began to distribute people. As a result, the main character, together with Jonathan and Carrie, had to go to the Netherlands and inform the team from there. Peter was indignant, and the commander said that the place Rhinus is in is classified, and only he is able to break the security system and help others get inside. The main character says that he recently performed field tasks. The chief stood up and reminded that he had undergone basic training, so he would be able to complete the assignment. The man tells him not to worry, and assures the boy that even if he is caught, he will not be hurt, and if he is injured, he will be treated. Peter does not understand anything, and the boss informs that this guy is in a psychiatric hospital and is under guard. He wondered if they were talking about one person at all. The events are transferred to the student years of the main character. While dining with his friend, he drew his attention to how handsome Rhinus was. His interlocutor says that he is good at hacking everything, and that last Christmas the Pentagon took over, and adds that he would not be so smart if his father was not Thomas Sweeney. He says that he looks a lot like his father, and that if you look closely, you can see the similarity in appearance. And Peter at this time notices Rhinus's gaze on him, flinches, and blushes. The main character does not understand why fate brought him together again. All these 8 years he tried so hard that he even forgot about his first love, and only then realized how stupid he was. The boy had been in a relationship when he was 21 years old, but he didn't feel the way he felt with Rhinus, with whom they were just sexual partners. Arriving at the place, Peter inspected the hospital and remembered how, after starting work, he failed one of the tasks and the young man died at the hands of the dealer. He saw girls in white robes and remembered that he had heard that only people from rich families with head problems were put here. Suddenly, around the corner, the main character saw a person in a SpongeBob suit. A chill ran down his spine and he thought that people here are really crazy. Some of the patients were running on the street and some were sitting on a bench in sadness. Watching this picture, Peter wondered if Rhinus had a place among these psychos. At the hospital, he met a doctor who introduced himself as Rude Hauer and told him that he was responsible for Mr. Stinson. Going to the right ward, the guy said that recently Sam was diagnosed with colon cancer and he underwent an operation and now he needs care. The main character remembered that he was an informant who was part of the team that carried out the last mission, and he is here under the cover of his grandson, Jaden Woods. Peter says that he did not visit his grandfather before because it was difficult to get leave, but this year he threatened to be fired and was given it. Suddenly, a man runs up to the doctor and says that someone is behind the mountain and is trying to catch up with him. Rude calms him down and says he'll kick them out again. The guy tells him to look at his grandson, who came to visit him, and the main character is surprised that this grandfather is Sam Stevens because he does not look like the photo that was shown to him. Peter understands that something is wrong here. After looking at him, the man says that he is not his grandson, and the doctor offers to take a closer look. He reaches out to him and says he's really Jay, but Sam hits him on the arm and starts yelling that he's here to get him and that he's that guy's accomplice. The man leaned against the doctor and ordered him to grab the main character. Rude suggested that he call his daughter, that is, his mother, and maybe that's when his memory would come back to him. Peter asks to wait a second and starts dialing his own mother's number but tries to stay calm and thinks it's some kind of mistake. The guy takes the phone from his hands and says that you can't make calls here and that this person's daughter died last year. Sweat runs down his face when the doctor asks who he really is. Rude is looking for something on the phone, and the main character realizes that Sam's daughter is definitely alive and even runs her business now, and that the operation on which the outcome of the Third World War depends cannot be failed in 10 minutes. He gives the phone to the owner and asks if he came here alone and which body he represents, and says that he should not think of impersonating another person, introducing himself by her name. After hearing the conversation, 2 guards start walking towards them, and the doctor asks to take Peter out of here. The guy tries to stay calm and realizes that he needs to come up with something urgently. The men grab Rudd and take him to another room, and the main character asks if he is a patient. One of the guards replies that he is not a doctor, but simply stole a robe and decided to fool around. Peter was suddenly approached by a boy who said that he was actually responsible for Sam, and that he came because he overheard a recent conversation and introduced himself as Mark Hauer. The doctor leads him along the corridor and says that it is better not to wander here, because it can be bad for his mental health, and the main character thought that he felt it well on himself. He led him to a door and told him that it was Mr. Stinson's room. Opening the door, Peter saw a bent man sitting on his bed. The boy turned to him, and he came up and hugged him, calling him his puppy. The protagonist thought that this password was correct, and that this time it was definitely Sam. He puts his head on his shoulder and says that he has come, and that the man must have been waiting for him for a long time. Peter recalls his student years, and how at one of the parties a friend approached him and asked how he managed to hack into one of the most prestigious technical institutions in the world. The main character answers that it was easy, because the protection system did not last even 5 seconds. After his words, everyone present showed their admiration for him. One of the teammates shouted that tonight was a night in honor of Peter, and another invited Reynos to join. The guy turned to the main character, saying that yesterday he was also in that place, and his laptop turned off while he was filling out the report. He was worried and said that he can't restore everything yet, because the bootloader of the operating system is not working. Rhino says everything is fine, and asks if he can help him with the report. Feeling guilty for not being able to hand in the work on time, Peter agreed and added that he would help in any way he could, and the boys said that then he would be off at the party today. The guests discussed that they did not expect to see Rhinus here, and that he was admitted through another passage, although it is difficult for ordinary people to enter this establishment even through the main entrance. The party was in full swing, and the young man did not notice how someone had poured prohibited substances into his drink. A guy approached him and asked if he was following what was happening here. The main character answers that people are mixing something and giving it away. Rhinos asks if he knows who he is, and Peter pulls his face to his and says he does. He asks if the young man is going to sit here all the time and says that there is a mouse next to him. The guy turned around and took her in his arms and started saying that they had a serious conversation here. Rhinos says that she doesn't seem to be in the mood for a dialogue with him. Putting her in the jar, he said that Peter could talk to her later, and took his hand and told her to come with him. The guy brought him into the room and sat him down on the sofa and gave him some pills. The main character asked what kind of medicine it was, and he answered that people give and take something all night, and he is surprised only now. The young man understands that this is true and still licks them off Rhinos' hand. After coming to his senses a little, he says that he did not consider him a bad person, but he did not think that he could give someone medicine out of his hand. He asks if the guy really thinks he's cute, and the guy answers that he really is and adds that he's also handsome, smart, and rich. Suddenly, the main character raises his hand to his mouth and asks what kind of medicine he just took, but does not have time to finish and falls on Rhinos' shoulder. Peter woke up only in the morning and at first did not understand what had happened to him, but after noticing the sleeping boy on his shoulder, the puzzle slowly came together. Events are transferred back to the hospital. The guy asks Sam if he doesn't have the feeling that they are being watched, and he replies that it's a normal thing in the hospital and that the doctor examines him 4 times a day. The main character said that those he met in the hall looked quite strange and behaved as if they had infiltrated the hospital and pretended to be patients. The man says that he is old and cannot know for sure, but he also thinks that something is wrong here. Peter says that it may be just a prank of a mentally ill person. He adds that if this is really something that can affect the course of World War III, then everyone here will be targeting Raisin. Sam asks if he's really that smart. The main character says that this could really be the case because there is something about this guy that makes everyone so worried. The man leans towards Peter and says that he also got curious, so he followed him a little, and as soon as he wanted to say something, he asked him to speak more quietly because they could be overheard. As soon as the protagonist looked through the window, he saw SpongeBob in it, holding his laptop in his hand. After checking the bag, he realized that it really wasn't there. Running out of the ward, he rushed after him, not understanding when this crazy sponge managed to steal his equipment, because he didn't even touch it. Peter understood that he would not be able to hack the server without a laptop. Running around the corner, he noticed that the madman had disappeared, leaving his equipment on the floor. Picking it up, he thought about the fact that a hospital for mental patients is a separate universe. Suddenly, he heard the conversation of 2 men, one of whom asked if he had managed everything well, and the other replied that he had tried to do it as carefully as possible, and that now there was nowhere to go. The guy did not understand what he had just heard, and one of the interlocutors said that he did not think that they would surrender so quickly and hoped to get rid of the Americans. The man looked around and seeing Peter asked his assistant what he was doing here and whether he came here because of Rhinos. Suddenly there was an explosion and the main character instinctively covered his head with his hands and then realized that the explosion happened near Sam's room. Pushing through the crowd, the boy managed to get to the right ward and made sure that his premonition had not let him down. Peter began to approach more, but the doctors said that he could not go any further, and he began to shout that this was his grandfather's room and began to ask if he was alive. Someone from the medical staff says that now Sam is being given artificial respiration, and then they will be sent to the operating room. The boy cannot calm down and is told that it is better to leave. The main character sharply pushed the doctor to the side and ran into the ward in order to investigate the place of the explosion and draw the necessary conclusions. Once inside, he was able to determine the type of bomb by the smell, and after looking around the room, he realized that it was outside the window, exactly where he was sitting. Therefore, Peter thought that he was the target. The doctor grabbed him from behind and led the boy out of the room. When he came out, he noticed the man in the wheelchair, and he panicked when he realized that he was being watched. The protagonist realizes that it was he who was the dealer, the target of his last mission, which failed 3 years ago. Peter was standing with the doctor behind the glass near the intensive care unit. Looking at Sam, he informs that their hospital does not have everything necessary to support his condition. So tomorrow, he will be transferred to another. The boy asks Mark why this happened just when he left, and hugging him began to say that if he had been with his grandfather, this would not have happened. The main character says that the doctor has no idea how hard it was for the man and at the same time took something out of his pocket. He says that it wouldn't hurt for Peter to take a sedative, and Peter replies that everything is fine and he's just a little dizzy and asks if he can lie down somewhere. Mark says that there is a free room on the 4th floor and calls someone to find out if it can be used, and the guy quickly hides the stolen card in his pocket. The main character looks at Sam and thinks that if it wasn't for SpongeBob, he would be lying there now and his laptop would be broken. But if the man will soon be transferred to another hospital, he needs to hurry. During the night of the same day, Peter searched the north wing of the hospital, but unexpectedly saw the barrel of a gun at his side. The man told him to go into the ward and not to think of resisting, because he knows that he is from the CIA. Entering the room, the boy sharply knocks the weapon out of his hands, but he takes out a knife. The main character leaned against one of the pedestals and realized that his attacker could not see well in the dark. Peter realizes that bringing a knife, a gun, and a bomb to the hospital is too much, and decides to attack him from behind before he sees him. The guy takes the harpoon attached to the guard's belt and leads him to work. As a result, he managed to tie up the man and ask where he came from. The main character changed into a man's clothes and went to the right department. But the door turned out to be closed, and one of the means of protection was the recognition of the membrane of the eye. Peter sat down to break the door. He was sure that this information should be in the database in any case. For him, a specialist in burglaries, such a door was not a problem. He had to upload information about his colleagues to the hospital's database so that they could continue working. Suddenly he heard the door open and 2 guards entered the room. They decided that the thief left because he could not solve the complex lock and began to resent why Hauer's ID is always stolen. The man asked his colleague not to quarrel with him, because things happen in life, and the main character noticed that he had forgotten to take out the USB drive and prayed that they would not notice it. While the guards discussed today's explosion, Peter lurked and only emerged from his hiding place when they left. He had to find the hospital records of Rhinos, and thought he would like to search for something about his ex-lover on Facebook, not in the database of a mental hospital. After finding information about him, the boy saw that all the forms were almost empty, and thought about the guard's words, that he seemed crazy to them during the day. Suddenly, he receives a call from the commander on his microphone, and he informs that he has successfully completed the mission. The man says that he knew that everything would work out for him. The main character asks him to check the downloaded material and says that Sam was hit by a bomb. The boss asks what is on his own account, and he answers that he will report it in writing. Peter walks around the hospital and wonders why Rhino's card was blank, and the commander asked where he was going. The guy says he's just checking something. He notices that the light is on in his room, and the man asks him to check what is happening there. The main character assures himself that this is not nonsense, but just curiosity. The boy thinks that there is nothing strange in the fact that he wants to see how the person who dragged him into hell lives now, and looks in the window of the ward. He was shocked by what he saw in her, and for a moment doubted whether it was Rhino's at all, but noticing the familiar birthmarks on his wrist, he realized that it was definitely him. The main character realized that the rumors that the boy had lost his mind were true and could not understand why this happened to him. Someone imperceptibly approached Peter from behind and stabbed him in the neck. He bent over, his glasses fell from his face, and heard someone call out to him and ask what happened. The events are transferred 10 years back to that morning after the party. The main character notices Rhinos in front of him and strokes his cheek. He doesn't understand why this guy is in front of him and thinks that it's impossible and that he can't even be sure if it's a dream or reality, because he overheard a little yesterday. Peter came out of the room in only underwear and marveled at how nice and simple it was. Opening the refrigerator, he could not understand how he could dream of such a luxury. He took a drink of cold water and realized that he was wrong about Rhinus. Trying to remember what happened yesterday, he remembered only how they met. The main character understands that something is wrong here, because when he drinks water, the sensations are too real. Hearing the sound of a heel, he jumped and turned towards the sound. The guy sat down, hiding from the stranger behind the counter, and covered his mouth with his hand so as not to make a sound. He was afraid that the girl would think he was a thief. Peter thought that they must be acquaintances, and that it could be either Rhinus's sister or girlfriend. Suddenly she approaches him and asks for what purpose he is hiding under the table. The main character begins to say that he is not a robber, and begins to explain that they drank yesterday and he does not remember how he ended up here. The girl asks what idiot would mistake him for a thief. She adds that she is surprised that Rhinus still goes after men, and that he sleeps with people like him, but says that it does not matter, and there is no need to be angry about it. The girl says that as long as Peter does not pretend that they are a couple, everything is fine with her, and asks if he will have breakfast. The main character refused. The boy covered himself with a towel and said that he was going to leave, but suddenly Rhinus hugged him from behind and asked where he had gone and why he woke up so early. He says that Peter needs to rest more. The main character withdrew and did not understand why he was behaving so strangely, and thought that maybe he was just confused with someone. The girl greets Rhinus and asks if he hasn't had breakfast yet, and the boy asks the main character if he will have breakfast. Bilyavka answers for him and says that he is going home. She tells him to sit down and eat because she has prepared breakfast for him. And the boy does not calm down and asks why Peter is leaving so quickly, and wonders if everything is okay. The protagonist replies that everything is fine, and the girl again asks Rhinus to sit down to breakfast and, turning to his lover, tells him to get out of here. The boy tells Kate that he is not talking to her and wants to hear it from Peter, and asks again how he is feeling because he was sick yesterday, and he is worried. The main character does not understand why Rhinus cares about him so much, and says that it is time for him to go. But he does not know where his clothes are. He says that he got dirty yesterday, so he is washing himself now. Kate calls her boyfriend and he sharply tells her to get away from him because he does not want to eat breakfast. She asks what the matter is, and he answers that Peter is his ideal and he wants him to be his lover. The girl grabs the main character by the towel and asks if he will really leave her for this boy, and tells him not to talk nonsense. Kate swung to hit him, but Rhinus stopped her hand and said that she broke into his house and slipped past the security, and she asked what he meant. He pins her against the wall and tells her that she's breaking the law now and that she can discuss it with his lawyer because he won't let her get away with it. The girl pushes Rhinus away and asks if he threatens her. The guy replies that he's just scaring her, but if she doesn't leave, he'll continue, and asks her not to come near them again. Kate gets angry and says she's leaving, not because she's scared, but because he's lying about his feelings for Peter just to stay away from her. Before leaving the house, she removed everything on the table and sent them both away, while the boys just looked at it calmly. Looking at the pogrom that the girl had caused, Rhinus apologized for the fact that the main character had to see it and for dragging him into it. The guy says that Kate is abnormal, and he didn't know how to get rid of her anymore, and he had no other way out but to say that he has another loved one. Peter says that everything is fine and he understands everything, and that Rhinus would make a good actor, because if he didn't know the whole situation, he would believe his words. He gives the young man a bag of clothes, and he notices that it looks quite expensive. The boy asks if everything is fine, and after making sure that it is, the main character goes to change his clothes. Peter thanks for the clothes and says that it is time for him to go home, and Rhinus offers to sit a little longer if he is not in a hurry, but he is thinking about an urgent report and is about to leave. The boy calls out to the main character and says that he forgot to put on his shoes, then hands him a pair of sneakers and bends down to help him put them on. The young man blushed and grabbed his shoulders. Getting up, Rhinus said that he likes these shoes and pushing them aside, calls the elevator and tells him to be careful on the way. The protagonist woke up lying on some kind of bed. He sits down and tries to bring his clouded mind to his senses. Peter notices that he is chained with expensive branded handcuffs and is in an expensive medical ward. He understands that the one who did it is very rich, but he doesn't know why he wants him. A dark-skinned boy enters the room, and he recognizes him as William Valencia, a member of a Mexican drug trafficking group. He says that the main character can call him Will. He puts food in front of Peter, who looks at him and asks what he is doing. The servant replies that the master asked to be polite to him, and he understands that it is about the drug baron Herman. The guy says that if he needs anything, he can contact him, and the main character asks if he can take off the handcuffs. The servant says that he will take them off so that he can eat in peace. Peter realizes that he is being treated too well as a hostage and thinks that maybe they are trying to bribe him. The guy asks when his boss will come, and William says soon and offers coffee. The protagonist agrees and asks for more syrup. Peter asks why it is he who makes the coffee, because his master must have many servants. He answers that it is indeed so, because for each case there is a separate person who performs it. The boy says that it is an honor for him to serve his master and puts a cup of coffee on the tray. Suddenly he remembers something and says that he will leave him for a while. Looking at his reflection, he thought that if yesterday's mission was successful and it was daytime, then his colleagues should have infiltrated the hospital in the morning. So he coped with his task. While drinking coffee, he thought that he did not expect to meet the Baron in such a place and realized that when he felt danger, he wanted to run away from here. He thought about how to remove the handcuffs and noticed how the same SpongeBob was looking at him through the window in the door. Peter realizes that he might be able to help him. The main character begins to thank him for saving his life and asks if he can help him again, and he will definitely thank him later. As soon as the person in the suit approached him, the boy asked her to find a pin or some kind of wire. He puts his hand to Bob's mouth, after which he feels sick. Peter realizes that, most likely, something was put in his coffee. He asks if this person can talk, and she raises her finger to show that she has come up with something. The guy takes off the SpongeBob suit, and the main character at this time becomes even worse. He begins to panic, thinking that he has been poisoned. He lifts Peter's head and puts it on his shoulder, and Peter, smelling a familiar aroma, begins to understand that he knows this person. The main character woke up from the shots and immediately jumped on the bed. Suddenly the door opened and William walked back into the room. The guy calls William, and he says that there is a small problem, but it will be quiet soon, so he has nothing to worry about. Peter asks to unbutton him, and the servant says that he was ordered to protect him. The main character says that he doesn't want to die in bed, and that he can fight too. After assuring the boy that he is not going to run away, he is still released from the shackles. Will asks to follow him, and he asks if he can take off the bracelets. The servant says that only his master has the key to them, so Peter can consider it a gift, but he does not understand what kind of gift it is. Leaving the ward, the main character noticed a bunch of dead and wounded people around, and hoped that Jonathan and Carrie were safe. Suddenly, someone points the barrel of a gun at them, and William quickly turns and shoots and neutralizes the enemy. Peter wonders where he hid such a powerful weapon. The guy says that it was modified specifically for the order of his master. Taking a closer look, the main character sees that it is a completely different gun, and, most likely, it was assembled to order. Peter leaned over to one of the corpses and asked where his boss was. William replied that he was not here, but just wanted to pick up something from the hospital without too much fuss. The guy understands that German also wanted to take Rhinos away, and decides that it is necessary to check his ward. He says he needs to check something and leaves. Arriving at the right ward, he notices a lot of blood and broken glass there, and realizes with sadness that he has already been taken away. William asks if he watched everything he wanted to, and Peter says yes, and that there is nothing unusual here. The boy says to go to the roof because his master is already waiting. Walking along the corridor, they heard someone reloading a gun in the dark and stopped. They both prepared their weapons for the duel. Suddenly, Jonathan comes out from around the corner, pointing a gun at them. Realizing that this is his colleague, he puts him down and asks where he was. The main character says that he was attacked, but now everything is fine, and asks what he missed. The guy says that when he disappeared, their boss made a fuss and sent him in search. A colleague says that as soon as he left the restaurant, a shootout began and he managed to catch a bullet. Peter asks if the wound is serious and says that the bleeding must be stopped. Jonathan says that there is no time now and reports that the Russians have dragged the target to the roof and they need to stop them before the helicopter takes off. But the main character realizes that his wound looks serious.